Hi guys, welcome. My name is Amanda. For those of you that are new here, for those of you who've been here before, welcome back to Friends and Family G'day. So we're going to be making some of this today, and we're also going to be doing some paprika powder as well, doing some dehydrating. So I'm not going to waste anything of the capsicums, which is what we are going to be using to make this sauce. Just 3 ingredients, really simple. No, you don't need to put them under a griller or remove the skins or do any of that, but you will need a tomato juicer or at least a sieve, okay? So I'm going to be using both. But if you don't have a tomato juicer, and mine's just a manual machine, if you don't have a juicer, then you will need to have a sieve. This recipe is incredibly versatile, can be used with any peppers. This time I'm doing it with the sweet peppers instead of using it with the hot chilies, but you can add additional ingredients to this recipe if you like. So if you want to add some heat to the sauce, you are quite welcome to add whatever peppers you like. We use it for whatever peppers are growing in excess in the garden. We bag them all up. Once we reach 500 grams, I usually make up a couple of bottles of sauce, okay? I have 2 kilos of red peppers, and so I'm going to be simply putting them into a saucepan with some other ingredients, and we are going to make the sauce quick and easy. So I have 2 kilos of sweet peppers. I'm not going to be skinning them. I'm not even going to be seeding them. All I'll do is take out the core, but you don't have to take the core out if you're using a machine like the tomato juicer. I just want to take that green off just because I don't want any bitterness, and it's that simple. And then into a saucepan they can go. So I will just be chopping up seeds and all, skin and all, directly into a saucepan that's big enough to hold however many you are doing. So like I said, I'm doing 2 kilos of peppers, that you can do as little as 500 grams. I will put the recipe in the description for a single recipe, which is 500 grams of peppers as well, for those of you that are interested in making this. This is a really good recipe to be using when you're doing any of your hot chilies. So because you don't need to do any preparation for hot chilies either, you just need to chop off their stems. I'm being a little bit more with the capsicums, I'm coring them out, but you don't have to. You can make this as simple as you want, okay? So I'm just simply going to take out all my cores. I'm not taking out the veins or anything else. I'm just chopping them into small enough pieces just so it saves cooking time, really. No other reason, but you can do them just whole if you want to. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just cut the remainder of these capsicums and get them into the pot and get them cooking. All right, so 2 other ingredients that we're going to need. We're going to need some white vinegar, and we're going to need some salt. You can use any kind of salt you like, preferably non-iodized salt. So I'm using just a table salt, but a sea salt for this recipe, and what I usually use, or you can just use pink Himalayan salt, you can use rock salt, you can use any kind of salt you like, because it is going to dissolve. Okay, so this is just a very simple recipe, okay? We're not trying to complicate it. I want to provide a recipe that is so simple that anyone can do it at any time, and it's a great way to use excess produce that you have, or if you are purchasing produce and it's on sale, then it's a great way to utilize the produce that's seasonal. These capsicums were $2 a kilo. I've got 2 kilos here, so this is $4 worth, and like I said, it will make several bottles of sauce for me, plus it will also make paprika powder. All right, and that's because I'm not growing capsicums yet at this time of year. I've got plenty of chilies. It's too early in the season for capsicums, but it is capsicum season, so I figured while it was not expensive to buy a few, and I was at the markets a few days ago, that I would get myself enough to make some sauces up, and I can gift them later on for presents. So along with our capsicums, we're going to use some white vinegar. I'm just going to use the end of a bottle of Cornwall white vinegar. So this mostly cooks off during the cooking process, but for 2 kilos, I need 2 cups. So if you're doing a single recipe, which would just be half a kilo, then you'll only need half a cup of vinegar. I find 2 cups is a good amount, because these are basically going to be, with a lid on, steaming as they break down on the stove. They take a little while, but we want enough liquid that they don't burn when they start. We don't want them catching. If you want to do a smoked paprika, then you can always do the skins separately. But I'm doing a sweet paprika. So for this amount, I need 4 teaspoons of salt. All right, single recipe is 1 teaspoon of salt. So single recipe is half a kilo of capsicum, half a cup of vinegar, and 1 teaspoon of salt. Onto the stove this goes until it is rolling boil and the lid goes on it. All right, while they're on the stove, I'll do some work with the eggs. So, wasn't planned, but needs to be done. I have a commercial packet of eggs when our chickens were not laying, okay? So, fresh bantam eggs, fresh chicken eggs versus barn-laid commercial eggs, okay? These ones have gone beyond their expire date, even though they are in the refrigerator. So, I'm just testing to make sure they're all still fine before I oil them. Okay, so I'm not glassing them or anything else. I just want to check to make sure they continue to sink, which means they're perfect. All right, so they're still viable. They're not rotten at all. If they were floating or starting to come off the bottom, that means that the gases have started to build up. But because they've been kept in the cold refrigerator in their container, they're still perfectly fine. All right, so their use by date was 3 days ago. I want them to extend that shelf life even further. I should have done this when I first purchased them. I just normally do, but just forgot this particular batch. I will be doing these ones. These are fresh laid eggs, except they've all been washed. And I know you don't wash a bloom off normally, but they were terribly muddy. So they have been washed, which means the bloom has been washed off them, which means they won't be viable to stay on kitchen shelves for extended period of time now that the bloom has been removed from these little guys. So I have no option but to boil them, and that way I'll extend their shelf life also in the refrigerator for 6 to 9 months. All right, because this many eggs laying, this is for a couple of days. When you've got that many eggs, we want them to be viable. I have to do a bunch of egg dishes, quiches and things like that. That'll be coming up next. All right, so our eggs need to be oiled. This is what we need: food grade mineral oil. Okay, be sure that it is food grade. All right, you can do your own research on this one as well, people. But the recommendation is once your eggs have been coated in said product and refrigerated, you can extend the shelf life up to 6 months. Some say longer than 6 months. I say 6 months is a long enough period of time. My eggs will not be in the fridge for 6 months. Like I said, I need to do some quiche. When I do a quiche, it's 12 eggs, 2, 4, 6, 8. There's not even enough there to do really, but I will oil them anyway. I've got to do my own as well. I always do this. This is usually something that is done when we purchase eggs, long before we've gotten to this stage. So as long as you're using the mineral oil, which is food grade, then coating your egg in the oil seals them up because they're porous, okay? So they're going to absorb oxygen. So we're trying to block all of those little porous cells of the eggshell. We want to block all that off to stop the eggs aging any further, which is why we mineral oil the eggs. It's just a way to extend the shelf life. And we know eggs can be quite expensive different times of the year if you can get them at all. All we need is one more set of viruses, and we end up with a really expensive product. And because they've got a limited shelf life, if you can extend that shelf life, like we do with everything in the pantry, trying to extend the shelf life of our products, that extends also to the eggs. Right, so they are commercial eggs versus freshly laid eggs. Now, normally freshly laid eggs have got the bloom on the outside, which makes them safe to keep on your benches, you know, for an extended period of time or for glassing, because these had to be washed. As you can see, they're not clean, great, because they were, you know. So, consequently, they need to be oiled. Then these will be kept in the refrigerator and in a box. Okay, so in a cardboard box in the bottom of the fridge so that they don't absorb any of the, do a bit more of a clean. Oh, you've covered in oil now. Yeah, so this is one way, one method, instead of water glassing your eggs, to extend the life of them, if you are going to be refrigerating them or not. You know, same difference. If you can keep them on keep it at room air temperatures, you can do that as well. It's too hot here during summer and in the later part of spring to be leaving eggs, in my opinion, on a shelf in the kitchen here, even on the kitchen here, unless I'm incubating them, which these are not. These are fertile. So technically, I guess I could incubate these if I wanted to. I just don't want to. So these are all going not in the incubator. These are for eating or sharing. Either way. And then I'll go and check on that capsicum. All right, so all the eggs are done. It's taken 2 minutes. And we will go and check on the capsicum on the stove. All right, so the vinegar is starting to boil. Perfect. I'm just going to stir this around a little, put the lid back on, and just let it continue to boil away. So a really big pan of capsicums and just a couple of cups of liquid, no additional water or anything's required because these will all break down as they cook. We put the lid back on and just let them continue to steam. In about 10 minutes, they've started to break down, about halfway down is where we're at. So still need to continue cooking them until they're nice and soft because we're going to be getting all of the flesh, the pulp, out from these capsicums. So putting the lid back on and letting them continue about another 10 minutes. Okay, it's been 15 minutes of rapid boiling. So I've just turned the heat off. I'm just going to let these come off the boil. As you can see, they're completely broken down and they're all nice and soft, okay? Which is what you want. Pretty simple. You don't have to do anything. Just put them on the stove and leave them there. That's it. Now we're going to have to press out all of the juice and remove the skins and any seeds that are left. So I'm just going to take it off the heat and move over to the prep area. Alright, so this is my tomato juicer. It's just plastic. It's not special. I want a metal one, but I haven't been able to find one. It's a manual operated one, which is why I particularly like it, and it just sticks to the bench when I pull the lever at the back there. You can use the meals if you like to use these. I personally don't. They drive me insane when it comes to removing skins and seeds, or you can just use a sieve if you're doing a smaller amount, okay? Either way, we will be using this later on. I'll go and get the capsicums. So if you know a good brand of a metal version of these juices, pop it in the comments for me because I am searching for one, something that's available preferably in Australia. I'd like a cast iron one if I can get one, but I've been hunting vintage stores for many years. I've owned this one for many years as well, but I've been hunting for a very long time and haven't been able to find one that is not electric of some description. That's the timer for our capsicums. I'll just block this guy onto the bench and go and get the capsicums off the stove now. So I'm just going to use my tomato juicer just to remove all of the seeds and the pulp. So I'm just going to add them straight into my hopper. And like I said, this one's manual, so it just needs a crank of the handle. And that'll separate it all for me. If you're using a sieve or the meal, however you're using it, the idea is that we just want to separate as much as we can. Let's see if I lock it onto the bench because it is undone. So simply turning, I'll just move these peppers out of the way. Simply turning the handle, pretty simple. And it juices and separates all of the seeds and all of the skins, which is why this is really a versatile, so versatile machine whenever you're doing tomatoes or chilies and you don't want to be peeling and chopping chilies, especially the really hot ones. That's what I use this for as well. So it's pretty handy. Not expensive. I don't even know where you get one of these ones from these days. But see, it just simply takes up all of the skin and pulp, which we will be keeping and using once we press it through the sieve as well, because there's still a lot of goodness in those skins and the seeds. So we will be still putting all of what comes from this juicer all of the skins, the seeds, and any additional juices will go through the sieve again and be pressed through a fine sieve until there is nothing but the skin remaining. And then that will go into the dehydrator to turn into our paprika. Okay, I'm going to tip the last of this in. Doesn't take long. So after a couple of minutes, that's all gone. And I have got my juice, my pulp, and my skins. Pop this into the sink. Okay, on to the next part. So we've got our juice. We have our pulp here and our skins, and this is what we need to work on now. So I'm just going to get the sauce out of the way, which is the juice. And that contains some pulp, but nowhere near enough. So what we're going to do is take our pulp and our seeds and our skin, and we're going to now put this through a sieve once again. So if you're already putting it through a sieve, you'll already be doing this process. It just takes a little bit longer. So all we're going to do now is press through and separate all of the pulp and the skin, and what I'll end up with in the sieve is just skin and seeds, which, like I said, I'm going to then put in the dehydrator to turn into paprika. It takes about 10 hours at 50 degrees in my dehydrator. Everyone's dehydrator is different, so it all depends. So we're just going to put all of our skins onto a tray. Like I said, into the dehydrator they will go. Anything on the bottom can get scraped off, and that can go into our sauce. But all of this just gets smoothed out as thin as you can, and into the dehydrator it needs to go. Like I said, I had mine set at 50 degrees and I ran it for 10 hours to make the last lot of powder, which after it's dried and then cooled goes into a spice grinder or a coffee grinder even, and gets ground into a fine powder, and that then becomes our sweet paprika. Alrighty, that's all done. Into the dehydrator that goes. Alright, onto the sauce. So this is our pulp that we've pushed through the sieve from the skin and the seeds. This is how much we have. We need to add it to our juice and the pulp that we already had from the juicer. So we're going to combine those two. This is a good time now to add any extra flavours you want. Things like some spicy paprika, perhaps a hot paprika. If you want to make a hot sauce, this is a good time to taste your sauce as well. Remembering this is pure capsicum, so it is supposed to taste like a capsicum versus a sweet sauce like a tomato sauce, for example. This is to replace capsicum or to be added to ingredients as a substitute for fresh capsicum, I guess. So adding it to a salad dressing makes beautiful seafood sauce. Really nice dip as well. If you add it to some cream cheese, it also gives you that lovely flavour. You can add it to boost the flavour of salsas or tomato soups. I like to add it into tomato soups as well. So I'm just mixing them really well, and then we're going to bottle it. So I have 4 of my liquid bottles ready, and if I need to, I'll get some of the smaller ones as well. So I'm just going to transfer this into my funnel. You can just use a normal funnel if you don't have enough these pourers, that's fine. Any funnel will work exactly the same. This just makes it easier to get it into the bottles without having any mess, because I don't want any mess. And then you can water bath afterwards. So this funnel holds about 500 odd mils, but it makes life really easy for filling up these bottles. Any bottles. So I will finish off just a third big one, I think. And because it is getting close to Christmas, I'll do some small ones as well for gifts for the food baskets that I'm making up. They're all going to get water bathed for the same amount of time, doesn't matter what size they are. Any water bathing more than 10 minutes sterilises the glass jars, so these don't have to be sterile. These are coming straight out of their box. So just grab a small jar for the last bit. So my big ones are 200 mils, my little ones are 100, and then I've got a little 50 ml pot. And I don't expect it to be the 50 ml, but it'll be a good little sample pot to have. The good thing about the funnel is it's got a stand, so you can just put it back on its stand and it doesn't make a mess. All right, top's going on. Now for the larger bottles, they've also got their little stoppers as well, so I'm just going to press them into place first. Makes it for easy pouring. And then onto the lids they go. These particular bottles have got caps as well, which can then be melted onto them as well to completely seal them, which is perfect for gifting as well. Not pressure canned. We're only going to be water bathing these. They definitely have got enough acidity in them that they don't require pressure canning. So I will be doing what I always do, and that's just doing a 15-minute water bath. So from cold, because these are quite cool now, they're not hot packed, which is why my jars weren't needing to be heated. By the time you've gotten through all of your sieving and tidying up of your jars, pushing it all through and then bottling it, these are no longer boiling hot, so we do go from cold onwards. So that is our sauces, really quickly done with 3 ingredients finished. So that's our sauces already ready to go into the water bath canner. Like I said, 15 minutes rolling boil for them. And the little pot I'm just going to put directly. It doesn't need to be refrigerated. It can stay on the shelf because there's enough acidity in these sauces that they don't need to be refrigerated once they've been opened. It's got a high enough concentration of vinegar in them, so you don't need to refrigerate them. So this one, even though I've just sealed it up, it can just go on the shelf for later while these go into a water bath canner for 15 minutes. And there we are, all finished. So I've made mild pepper sauce with mine this time, so I added some Tabasco to mine, which is my version of Tabasco is a really, really hot chili sauce that I've added to it, which is the same process, except these are just made with pure hot chilies. So I've just added a dash, about a tablespoon, which definitely increases the heat because these are made with Reaper chilies. So it definitely increases the heat. So I've made these ones mild. I've already got sweet ones as well. So I've got some mild, some sweet, and some serious hot pepper sauces as gifts for Christmas because it adds some lovely colour to the shelves. Simple, easy to make, 3 ingredients, and you can do it too. Okay, at 50 degrees, I have got some capsicum skins, just the sweet capsicums, not hot chilies. So I'm going to be making just a sweet paprika out of this once it's all dried off. So it has been drying now for about 4 hours. Okay, it's still a long way to go. It's at the leather stage at the moment, but I've just flipped it over just so that it gets a good air circulation on both sides. So it's quite crispy on this side. Flipped it over, and we're just going to continue to dehydrate this, and eventually we're going to turn this into a really vibrant sweet paprika powder, so you never have to buy paprika ever again. None of the capsicums have been wasted either. We've turned them into these gorgeous sweet pepper sauces. So I'll also be going through the process on how to go about making these beautiful sweet pepper sauces. Alright, so I'll finish off the paprika powder, which is capsicum skins that have dehydrated for about 10 hours in total, so they're nice and crispy and brittle. So I'm going to put them through the spice grinder, coffee grinder, and turn this into a powder. So incredibly simple. This was capsicum skins when I was making the capsicum sauce. So this is the leftover after I've put it through the tomato juicer or the juicer, as well as then pressing it through the sieve, and I've ended up with skins in this case that are just going to get blended up. I'm just going to do it in batches and not do it too fine the first time around. Still pretty fine, but it's not powdered yet. It's just a very coarse ground. And then I'll put it all through a second time. When you're doing this with capsicum skins, it's okay. When you're doing it with peppers, don't breathe it in. And by peppers, I mean hot chilies, because breathing in hot chili powder, not a good idea. Ask me how I know. It's not pleasant. So that's our first grind, and then I'll put it all back into the powder machine once more. So after it's been really finely ground, I'm just going to transfer it into its jar. And that's our sweet paprika. Just made with all of the skins of the capsicums, the red capsicums that were previously used to make the sauce. So perfect.